Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle made in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. That was kind of crazy stuff in the news today. Apparently all 100 members of Congress are having a special emergency meeting with President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, apparently in the news, there are U.S. ships heading towards Korea, and they have been joined by Japanese ships. Also, meanwhile, China has called for restraint on this armada heading towards North Korea. So a lot of people are saying that North Korea is almost like what you would call a Trojan horse, supported by the secret society world elites. It will be used as a pawn in the game of this big chess game for the New Age and New World Order. Some documents here I looked at. Some other things are happening. I just thought I made a slight mistake there when I said 100 members of Congress. Remember, Congress includes the House of Representatives, which is based on population, and the Senate, which is 2 members for every state, and we have 50 states. So the 100 people who are meeting with President Donald Trump would be from the Senate. Just to clarify. So there are some other things going on concerning world events. I'm just thinking, prior to World War I and prior to World War II, and of course prior to 9/11 when everybody was caught off guard again. And a lot of those false flag shootings, bombings, and other things, they were having military exercises during those events. So right now we got something called Gotham Shield 2017 overview. Go look it up. But apparently, they're having a lot of exercises in a lot of cities, preparing for an exercise for a nuclear event. Gotham Shield 2017 overview. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of alarming videos on YouTube. Yeah, I've even had a phone call from a friend, and she said, "Did you hear what's going on?" So I clicked on the TV, and now Obama's having or his Sean Spicer was having a meeting, 100 days of the Donald Trump, the first 100 days, what he's accomplished, and it just seemed a little weird. It was like breaking news on the TV when I was looking up the 100 senators meeting with the president information. So brief to Metropolitan, both New Jersey Federal Executive Board. Okay, so I found out, according to the videos on YouTube and other news, it's more than just New Jersey. Seems to be a pretty large event. Look it up, Gotham Shield 2017. And then I decided to look on the computer, and as we're all aware, in the past few years, 2015, Jade Helm 15, and apparently the Jade Helm event happens quite a bit, where they have military exercises all over the USA. Military drills and black helicopters in U.S. cities spark panics February 2013. I suppose I could go back and probably find these for every year lately. And then I've been mentioning that I've been watching videos on people who were raised in the Illuminati families and were trained to be participants in Illuminati satanic Luciferic rituals. I mentioned it, so I thought I'd print this out. Then I had another bankster, if I can find that quickly, I think it's so important. Who mentioned being part of these elites and winding up in invited to a satanic ritual where they sacrificed somebody. So this stuff is real. Alright, let's see if I can find that really quick. Alright, here goes. This is important, or I wouldn't take the time to do it. 5 things an elite banking Dutch whistleblower tells us. # NWO, but from the website The Outer Dark, the YouTube video site. 5 things an elite banking Dutch whistleblower tells us. It's pretty horrific. And there's more alarming news and exposure of the sky spraying issue, chemtrails. So with all that said, I thought I would continue with the Encyclopaedia Judaica and on the topic of Zionism. And the last video I did was in Germany. So I wanted to take a peek at what happened in Great Britain. We've got some crazy things going on in the world, and indeed crazy things have happened in the past. World War III was mentioned in Albert Pike, the leader of the Freemasons, a general for the South in the Confederate War, that would be required to bring about the New World Order. And we've got some other strange things I have to talk about, but it all seems to be coming together. So what is with Zionism, and what happened with Zionism in Great Britain? We talked about Germany, one video, about an hour and a half. We talked about the United States, 2 2-hour videos. And we talked about Zionism in general at the front of this whole 100 pages with 1 2-hour video. So this is going to be part 6. So let me start reading, and I have a few things to interject into this video in continuation of the a little bit more from this at the end of the video, and a word I looked up which provided a lot of useful information, important information, serious information. So here we go. In Great Britain, the UK, London, the country that went to war with Germany in World War I, Germany was really growing in its industrial manufacturing base and influence all over the world. And because of that, Great Britain was declining in its world influence, so they had this war. And Great Britain was losing, and so the elite Jews came to the rescue. The banksters and other people vying for Zionist state of Israel and said, we'll bring you the money you need. We'll get America into the war. We control President Woodrow Wilson. They didn't say that, but the books I've got and the evidence that I've uncovered shows that, because the president prior to Woodrow Wilson, they wanted to control him, and he said, no way. So they said, okay, the next president will do what we say. We'll put him in office. We got the money. And that's what they do with a lot of our politicians all over the USA and the world right now. These insiders working for these dark forces. So anyways, Great Britain accepted the offer. Germany offered friendly terms of surrender. Let's just let bygones be bygones. And then, of course, after World War I, during the hearings and trials, it came out publicly about the Balfour Agreement, this backdoor deal, which turned the tide, and then Great Britain won the war. And the Versailles Treaty, that during the hearings and trials, they burdened the German people with such an outrageous amount of money, of debt, they could never pay it. It strangled the country. So during the hearings, the Germans did find out about the betrayal, the treason, by the Jewish citizens in Germany, as well as the world Jewry during World War I. But what was going on at that time, before World War I? It's pretty explosive material, actually. In Great Britain, there were many Jewish and non-Jewish forerunners of the Zionist idea and supporters of Jewish settlement in Palestine, as well as an active group of Hoviar Zion. I have to look that word up, Hoviar. See Habit Zion in Great Britain. Thus, political Zionism appeared on the British scene very early. It was in London that Theodore Herschel, that would be the writer of the book The State of Israel, who outlined the plan to get all the Jews, to start immigrating to Palestine, now called Israel, in a program called Aliyah. And he was apparently working for and had the backing of, very important here, the Rothschilds, the people who have the banks. And according to Fritz Springmeier, were the leading family in the Illuminati, which apparently, according to these documents, they have satanic rituals, Luciferic rituals, where they sacrifice people, particularly children, during these ceremonies. And that one video, 5 Things an Elite Banking Dutch Whistleblower Tells Us, please go look it up and watch it. Details it, and if you don't think he's telling the truth, leave a comment below. But his feelings show there, and he had high aspirations of rising in the Illuminati to the top. He went to a lot of those ceremonies with naked women and everything, and he said that was great. But when they invited him to a sacrifice of a young child, he broke down mentally. He collapsed. He couldn't believe it. Which is the problem we have with people all over the world right now. They can see that opening ceremony in the Switzerland Alps mountains for the tunnel that was built, the grand opening ceremony. And they can see the ceremonies in the Super Bowl halftime shows. And they can see those ceremonies for CERN. If you haven't seen this stuff, look it up. Just look up Satanic Ritual at CERN, the Collider. Satanic Ritual at Super Bowl halftime shows. Satanic Rituals on Grammys and Emmys. And we'll watch some of the TV programming, Modern Family, Hunger Games the movie, and all the other propaganda back in the 1996, 98, or 2007, 2008, when I was driving from Florida to Maine. I bought some property, and I would listen to the talk shows, And the support for gay marriage was like 30%, 35%. And the talk show host would say, well, this issue is going nowhere. America is against gay marriage. And then 2009 and 2010 and 2011. And you can look this up. I've showed it on previous videos. But every year they gained a few more points on the polls. All that propaganda came out on the news. All those talk shows and all those issues and all those newspapers, all those magazines, all the stuff they were teaching in the schools to children. They were changing the public's mind. They were changing our culture. And I've got to ask a lot of people, do you think, looking at what we have now, do you think it was for the better, what they're doing? And if they're going to continue doing it, we've seen some of these preparations for mass unrest in the USA with Jade Helm 15 and all these other exercises and preparations and FEMA camps. We've seen, I have anyways, since 2005 when I became aware of it, the intense spraying of chemicals in the sky. You go look on the internet, they got Gwen towers, HAARP systems, H-A-A-R-P, microwave transmitters. Even in Washington State, they were driving around with vans emitting microwaves on the people as an experiment. So let me get to this here and see how it relates to this. So as I said earlier, political Zionism appeared on the British scene very early. It was in London that Theodore Herschel made his first Zionist speech at the Maccabean Club in November 1895, and outlined his program in an article in the Jewish Chronicle in January 1896. Before the publication of Der Judenstaat. He was received with great reservations not only by the Jewish establishment and even by some of the Hovier Zion. On his next visit in July 1896, he addressed a mass meeting of the East End and received an enthusiastic response. Among his first supporters and followers were Shepherdetic Haram Moses Gastor, the Hebrew teacher, Ephraim Isaac Kishnor, the already famous writer Israel Zangwill, and Jacob de Haas, following soon after by Joseph Cowen, Leopold Greenberg, Leopold Kessler. A lot of people, a lot of support prior to 1900. In March 1898, Hovier Zion in Britain joined the Zionist movement, mainly under the influence of Herbert Bertwich and Albert Goldsmith. As a consequence, the Second Zionist Congress in 1898 was attended by 15 delegates from Britain, compared to the 8 at the first Congress. So these people didn't even have a nation at this time, but they had their own Congress, and they were having all these fundraisers and all these recruiting methods prior to World War I and prior to World War II. So do you really think World War I and World War II and even 9/11 were avoidable? Look what Albert Pike said in 1880-something. And so much more. I've made a lot of videos. I got hundreds of hours of videos. I've read a lot of books. None of this turmoil, none of this destruction, none of this murder was avoidable. One large reason is, generally speaking, we the people don't know about what really happened. We don't understand, and they are using deception against us. We'll get into that. So back to this thing here. In January 1899, the English Zionist Federation was founded. It just never ends. And Sir Francis Abraham Montefiore, a grandnephew of Sir Moses Montefiore, elected to the first president of the Federation. Herzl, who from the beginning believed in British support for Zionism, registered the Jewish Colonial Trust as a British corporation, in 1899, and in 1900 convoked the Fourth Zionist Congress in London, and only the Congress during his lifetime not held in Basel. From here, the Zionist idea will soon soar higher and higher. Herschel declared in his opening speech, most British Zionists supported Herschel in the controversial over the Uganda scheme. So they had first planned, or one of the plans was to create a nation in Uganda, Africa. Didn't have a lot of support, but it was an idea that was out there. Can you imagine? While Jacob Goldblum, one of Herschel's first followers, led the opposition, the Zionist movement in Britain suffered a severe blow when Zigwil succeeded in 1905 and founded the Jewish Territorial Organization. In 1904, Chaim Weizmann settled in England, having received a position at the University of Manchester, and soon gathered around him a group of devoted Zionists who later distinguished themselves in the British and world movement, notably Simon Marx Israel, Chef Harry Sacher, and Leon Simon. In 1914, Weizmann became the vice president of the Zionist Federation under Joseph Cohen as president. World War I opened new political perspectives. As advisory committees on Zionism politically actively were formed, as advisory committee on Zionist political activity was formed, an advisory composed of Nahum Shokolo and Yihad Teshkoldau, members of the World Executive who had been moved to London. Cohen, Weizmann, Gaster, Bertwich. The Zionist Federation became an important factor in these activities. In 1915, it organized a petition demanding the establishment of a publicly recognized and legally secured home for the Jewish people in Palestine, as formulated by the Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897. The petition was signed by 77,000 adults out of the total Jewish population of 300,000. In January 1917, Cohen resigned from the presidency of the Zionist Federation to make way for Weizmann. In their struggle for British support for the Zionist goals, the leaders of the movement were enthusiastically supported by the Federation and advised and supported by Zionists from abroad who spent the war years in London, like Abhad Ha'am and Vladimir Jablonski, as well as some of the British Jews of high social standing, most notably Herbert Samuel and Lord Rothschild. Fritz Springmeier's book, The Bloodlines of the Illuminati, points out Rothschild as the leader of the bloodline families. And according to documents and many whistleblowers, not just one here, they perform these sacrificial ceremonies. I have recently confirmed that Savelle, an ex-Illuminati mind control programmer who opened the eyes of thousands of people on the internet. Please go look it up, and related videos, and I'm convinced people will believe it. There's so much. Even that one, 5 things an elite banking Dutch whistleblower tells us, #sign NDO, New World Order. All right, Chief Rabbi Joseph Harman Hertz came out as a supporter of Zionism in remarkable contrast to his predecessor Herman Adler, who had denounced Zionism as a fantasy. Still, anti-Zionist sentiments were so strong in the Jewish establishment that all the presidents of the Board of Deputies and the Anglo-Jewish Association, D.L. Alexandre and Claude Montefort, respectively, publicly repudiated Zionist aims in the name of their organizations. So there was a big battle in this Jewish world, all over the world, this diaspora, where they have attained high-level positions all over the world. That's one of their propensities that they have, their character. They desire, they want to be in higher places in business, in government, everywhere. They want to be the aristocrats, the elites. And I think they want it on a higher level than, say, people like me and normal, average people all over the world. Natives in Mexico or America. People who don't aspire for this world domination. But of course, not all Jews. The Torah Jews, they call them. And when you graduate from rabbi school, you can graduate from a Torah rabbi school and become a Torah rabbi, which is the Old Testament, which is God-fearing, which is theoretically the good Jews. But then they had a lot of people who turned away from the commandments of God, and they, I guess, went along with Sabbatai Zevi in 1666, the self-declared Messiah, who said, you don't have to be good, you can also be bad, but just like being good, you're supposed to be real good. So if you're going to be bad, and you want to obtain some kind of redemption, or some kind of Godhead-like thing, become a god, you got to be really bad. And he came up with a parallel set of commandments, which are opposite of the Ten Commandments. So instead of thou shalt not kill, thou shalt kill. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt steal. And apparently they have to commit an offense against the Gentile, do something evil to people. It's part of their religion, a commandment every day. And one of the highest religion, if you call Lucifer worship a religion, is to have these sacrificial events, sacrificing a human, which is what they do in the witchcraft and other cults like this stuff. It's quite bizarre, but apparently it's quite real. You could go look it up. You can watch the people talk. And if you get it, then you're going to say, all this other stuff has to be true. There has to be a purpose. This World War I, this New World Order, this Hunger Games movie philosophy, depicting everybody as slaves for these elites. And there have been a lot of commercials for movies and other things about people winning prizes for murdering other people. Even having the ability, if you can murder everybody in the room and you survive, you're the winner. But they were advertising, and I can't believe it, for some kind of movie. It's quite bizarre. Even the one about where the students had to take a test. And if you failed the test, you were killed. There's something very morbid going on. And I keep saying that. Other than jumping up in this chair and screaming it out, all I can do is read from these materials and show what really is going on behind the scenes. And maybe people will get it. If enough of us wake up, maybe we can prevent it. All right, Lord Rothschild accepted the honorary presidency of the Zionist Federation, and so became the addressee of the Balfour Declaration. So we are connecting Lord Rothschild directly with the Balfour Declaration, which was a betrayal of Germany and a deception to America to get America in the war. And these are the same people, a couple years earlier in 1913, that were in cahoots with Woodrow Wilson again to create the Federal Reserve, which wasn't federal. It was the banking system controlled by these elite Illuminati characters who do these sacrifices. Well, the Lord knows that I know that I repeat myself. on some of these videos on some issues. But I think it's absolutely necessary, because maybe somebody didn't watch all my previous videos or any of them. But here's the book by Fritz Springmeier, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Look at the symbol. Look at the two-headed eagle. Look at the flames behind the pyramid. Look on a dollar bill and see the flames or the rays behind the pyramid. See if I've got one here. There you go. See the rays behind the pyramid and the eye? The rays behind the pyramid? The skull and bones, like George Bush's skull and bones? So Fritz Springmeier is a well-respected, well-known, I don't think anybody calls him a liar, author of some books. And if you can find these, the value is going way up. But anyways, page 227 is the Rothschilds. You can see the symbol where the snake is eating its tail. The cross with the circle on top is called an Ankh. And the Ankh has an interesting meaning. The T under the circle means divine. The T means divine. The circle above it is a snake. And then in that six-pointed star. So that's a divine snake. Then the six-pointed star, the two pyramids upside down of one another. And then the swastika, the circle, and the snake eating its tail. The cow's head, the satanic five-pointed star symbol, the Rothschilds. I don't really want to get into this, but we're talking about the leading family of the Illuminati, which is a satanic cult, which many whistleblowers talk about the rituals. It's a little amazing how you can connect the dots on this stuff. So back to the Encyclopaedia Judaica on Zionism in Great Britain. Part 5 was on Germany. Then there was 2 videos on Zionism in the USA. And then a couple videos on Zionism. Period. I'm looking at my book here. So between page 1140 and 115, that's 60 pages there that I didn't do anything on Zionism. I have to read and pick some of that material out. But back to this one. The Lord Rothschild accepted the honorary presidency of Zionist Federation. So we know who he is, and we know what the Illuminati do. It's a Luciferic satanic organization, which I've been saying all along, the Theophist Society, all these occults, New Age, Rainbow Coalition, that's what they are. And apparently, according to my research, that's just the facts. That's what they are. They hate Christianity, and they just do not accept Jesus as the Messiah. Like a prophet, you can say, so you can understand it. But prophets were apparently beings, men, who were communicating through some kind of meditation or shamanistic activity, which has been going on for thousands of years, but communicating with the beings, the angelic beings, the spiritual beings. So the spiritual world has sent information to us in this world numerous times. Jesus said to the Jews, "Ye are the killers of your prophets." So God has been sending, and God apparently is the Lord of spirits, according to the book of Enoch. Just so we can rationalize it in our heads. So these spiritual beings have been interacting with this world forever. And it has to, because we're spiritual beings in these biological bodies. This reality is a gift. So anyways, we got the Rothschilds now involved. Leadership, which I already knew, but I never get the information out of some book like the Encyclopaedia Judaica. and so became the addressee for the Balfour Declaration. So this was part of the negotiations. We're going to help you turn the tide, win the war against Germany. We'll get the United States into the war. And all that had implications and forward movement for Zionism, getting the Palestinians land, and for the bringing about of a new age and a new world order, and the destruction of Christianity, and the destruction of apparently the Arabs' religion, Islam, with the prophet Muhammad. Again, a prophet, someone who was communicating with the spiritual world, advising the Islamic people. At the first Zionist World Conference after the war, held in London in 1920, Weizmann was elected president of the World Zionist Organization. So Lord Rothschild was the presidency of the Zionist Federation, and Weizmann is the president of the World Zionist Organization. And the seat of the executive and of the mainstream instruments and the movement were formally established in London, which thus became the capital of world Zionism. So Jews all over the world who are in powerful positions, own businesses, they're very aggressive that way. That has caused them a lot of problems. I'm not the one who says this. Many books say it. And when they do get into power and own a lot of the assets, let's say they move into a community and they wind up owning all the real estate where everybody else used to be property owners, and now they're all property renters. And these new controllers of that reality, these Zionist, Talmudic, bad Jews, not the good ones, Talmud Jews, that's their Bible, and Zohar and other books, not the Torah. Talmud Jews, Torah Jews. Talmud Jews are with the people who are also into the Kabbalah and other witchcraft, sorcery type of material. So then they would own all the properties and the businesses in the town, and everybody would become renters and get into poverty. And eventually, of course, the citizens of the town would grab their pitchforks and run all the Jews out. Apparently, that's the way it was repeatedly. And a lot of Jews did not go along with this, especially in Germany. They were Torah Jews. They did not go along with the Zionist movement, as we have been reading. And even in London, the world, a lot of good Jews knew what the bad Jews were up to. Even here in the United States, you got Christians and all kinds of races of people and religious people, but then you even have something like the mafia. These evil groups do exist. And the people in these secret societies or these secret intelligence services who are controlling the drug markets and human trafficking, our own intelligence agencies have been caught in this stuff. Everybody knows it. And even our leaders are hand-picked from these Freemasonic and Skull and Bone organizations, secret societies, Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commissions, Bilderbergers, Bohemian Grove, California, where they throw a baby in the fire, cremation of care. Elites like our presidents and other people have been photographed there. You can look it up. Alex Jones snuck in there and took a video. It's right out of a Halloween Frankenstein movie. All right. During 30 years of the British administration in Palestine, for 30 years, the British were controlling Palestine after World War I. The activities of the Zionist movement in Great Britain were of utmost importance for the work and struggle for the Zionist executive by providing mass support in the political, financial, and cultural fields. So we can say, with 100% accuracy, reading from these books and many others, from 1889 till today, the turmoil in the Middle East is all planned, A lot of false flags, a lot of lies, a lot of deception, but a lot of bombing, a lot of killing of people, a lot of depopulating of the area, and a lot of Aliyah, Jews moving from all over the world to populate the area. Biblical significance, and apparently, if it's true that they want this new age and new world order, which is a Luciferian religion, it is biblical. It's the devil, Baal, and even in New York and London, they were putting up the temple of Baal until people got outraged and said no. So then they called it the Temple of Palmyra, or Titan's Archway. There were several names they used. Same thing. And then I found out later on that it was out of the United Nations, UNESCO, and they were planning 1,000 of these archways to Baal, the devil, all over the world. Do you see the magic, satanic significance to this? But everybody wants to be in denial. That's the problem. All right. In 1929, the Board of Deputies joined the enlarged Jewish Agency for Palestine as a constitute body. In 1939, Selig Bordinsky, a member of the Zionist Federation, was elected president of the Board of Deputies, and since then only Zionists or staunch supporters of Israel have served in that capacity. Well, I hate to say it, but there's one heck of an analogy here to Nazism. But Nazism was only around for 10 or 15 years. 1933, 43, 12 years. This stuff, this plan has been in play for a couple hundred years with serious intent. And I've read earlier, I think in the beginning of this series here, if I can find the paragraph, beginning of my Zionist material here, if you want to go look it up, make a pause for a second and find it. I couldn't find the exact paragraph that I had read in a previous video, probably part 1. That would be 118 part 1. But I did find one paragraph, and that other paragraph said it was part of the historic prophecy of Jewish prophets that said it was their job to create a world with one religion. So, but I did find something that I had researched I wanted to mention. So I'll do it now. It's called Habit Zion. H-I-B-B-A-T Zion. The Habit Zion movement derived most of its ideas from the basic values of Jewish tradition. The sense of exile, the longing for redemption. We're going to see where that plays a key role. And the religious and spiritual attachment to Urza Israel. Most of the Jews of Eastern Europe, however, were distant from organized political and social activity, and their religious leaders, with few exceptions, were even opposed to it on the grounds that the coming of the Messiah should not be urged by human endeavor. So you shouldn't be trying to hurry up the Messiah. And Jesus was the rejected Messiah. So I looked up the word redemption, because I have read it a lot in these documents, and you can look it up on the computer. But the act of redeeming, atoning for a fault or a mistake. So way back then, 500 years ago, when they were banned from that area and dispersed all over the world, apparently they are atoning for a fault or a mistake. The state of being redeemed, deliverance, rescue. So they want God to rescue them. So maybe when the good God, dispersed them, maybe some of them turned to Lucifer, the bad God, if he's a god. I guess he is to the Luciferian Satanist, for redemption. theology, deliverance from sin, salvation, atonement for guilt, repurchase as of something sold. So they want something back. So this little investigation gets quite interesting, to say the least. So let me try to finish up this material here. And this book, there's really not a lot here, but it does seem to be pretty powerful stuff. All right. In 1929, the Board of Deputies, 1929, see how long this has been going on? And way before, as we have just read. Joined the enlarged Jewish Agency for Palestine as a constituting body. We read that. Zionist, here was a key thing I underlined. Zionist youth movements. So way back then they had Zionist youth movements. And in my research, it has become obvious and clear that the Jewish people don't want them to intermarry with the rest of us. They don't want them to associate too closely, even if they go to the colleges that we have. They want the separation. They don't want them to assimilate. Those are facts. Nobody should dispute that. And of course, not all Jews. Like I said, Torah Jews, the Old Testament. Apparently the good guys. We've seen pictures. They're protesting. They're writing books. They're trying to warn the rest of us about the devil. And then the Talmud Jews, and Talmud has a lot of nasty material and things that it says about we non-Jews, Gentiles, called Goy and Goyim, which means cattle. And I've read they think we're beings without souls, or we have souls from devils. At the 21st Congress in 1939, Great Britain was represented by 15 delegates, 8 representing the Federation, the General Zionist, and Pierre Zion, and 3 Maserati, and 1 of the Jewish State Party, the Revisionist, who at that time had already succeeded from World Zionism Organization and also moved their headquarters to London, which was the seat of the Zionist-led European Executive of World Jewish Congress. Wow. In 1944, the Board of Deputies embraced the Biltmore Program by adopting a resolution calling for the establishment of a Jewish state in undivided Palestine. So it was a strong struggle for many years and a lot of battling and a lot of money. And they had a lot of controlling positions in the United States and Great Britain and Germany and places all over the world. They were sucking money out of all those economies, sending it over there for this battle intensely for the last 100 years easily. And again, if you're reading this, this is indisputable facts. And this has everything to do with the looming World War III and the New Age and the New World Order and the destruction, discrediting of Christianity and Jesus. And apparently the Muslims over there are being destroyed also. Alright, so the calling for the establishment of a Jewish state in undivided Palestine, hopefully within the framework of the British Commonwealth, during the years of struggle and resistance, of the Yishvav after World War II. So I see this word a couple times, Y-I-S-H-U-V, Yishvav, and of course I scratch my head and go, what does that mean? Well, if you know how I do things, I went and looked it up. And it's a fascinating story. So I'll read a little bit from Wikipedia. Not that I'm saying this stuff is super accurate, but it gives us a gist of the idea and the depth of what really is going on. The Yishuv, I'm probably saying it wrong, is a term referring to the body of Jewish residents in the land of Israel, corresponding to the Ottoman Syria. Syria is under siege right now, being attacked by the U.S. and a lot of other NATO forces, trying to take him down. And then I guess they plan on moving to Iran next. And there's a lot of, well, this is supposed to bring about World War III and hell on earth for the rest of us. Until 1917. So 1917, apparently, after World War I, the Ottoman Empire lost its control over Syria and the whole region, the Middle East. So you know what they want. That's why, probably why, and part of why World War I occurred. They had to take control from the Arabs and the Turks, the Ottoman Empire, to be able to do what they wanted to do. Okay, then the OETA South, 1917 to 1920, and then later Mandatory Palestine, 1920, 1948. So these were the people that were controlling Palestine prior to the establishment of the State of Israel. So the Yishuv would be the body of citizens who were there. They have the old Yishuv and the new Yishuv. The new Yishuv would be the people that arrived after creation of the State of Israel. The term came into use in the 1880s, when there were about 25,000 Jews living across the land of Israel, then comprising the southern part of the Ottoman Syria. So this was part of Syria. So now you know why they're trying to destroy Syria, and they've conquered through the 9/11 event with the aid of the USA people and our money and our treasury. We owe those trillions that we spent on those wars, and our Federal Reserve and our government are controlled by those people. Isn't that weird? They control our government, they control our treasury, so they make our government go over to war and kill all the people, and then they wind up with the land, but we still have the bill to pay to them, the Illuminati banksters. Hope that wasn't confusing. Alright, so the Ottoman Empire, which was Ottoman Syria, was what it was called, I guess, according to this, continued to be used until 1948, by which time there were 700,000 Jews there now. So you see between this World War I and World War II, from 25,000 Jews to 700,000 Jews. That didn't happen by accident. The term is used in Hebrew even nowadays to denote the pre-state Jewish residents of the land of Israel. So those poor Palestinian people never saw this coming. The whole Arab region, when they watched what happened to Palestine, didn't realize there would be a 9/11 event, so the same thing could happen to the rest of them. And then, of course, we know they want to do the whole world with globalization, enslavement, Hunger Games movie philosophy. And apparently part of the prophecy is anybody who doesn't swear allegiance to Lucifer, or whatever they call him, some kind of antichrist being, is supposed to get beheaded. It's according to stuff in the Bible and other documents. And microchipping, mark of the beast on everybody. Alright, the old yeshiva refers to all the Jews living there before the Aliyah. That's the immigration wave. That's what they call it here. Oh, an immigration wave. This is all planned. Of 1882 by the Zionist movement. I'm only reading my highlighted portions. You can go look up Yishuv on Wikipedia or on the internet and educate yourself. I'm just trying to get the gist of the conversation here so people can understand what's going on in the world right now and why. And what the plans are for the end game. In the final centuries before modern Zionism, a large part of the old Yishuv, the people that were there before the State of Israel was created, spent their time studying the Torah. These were good Jews. And lived off of mohadat, strip ends, donated by Jews in the diaspora. So these people who were living there couldn't make any money significantly, so they were living off of donations from Jews all over the world. The new Yeshuv, refers to those who began building homes outside the old city, walls of Jerusalem, in the 1860s. So this has been going on since the 1860s. So Germany, England, the United States, all those countries that went to war, World War I, World War II, none of us had a chance. This was all planned. To the establishment of Peter Tekev and the first Aliyah of 1882, followed by the founding of neighborhoods and villages until the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. So that's Yeshuv. So I want to finish reading my last paragraph in the Encyclopaedia Judaica. All right. In 1944, as I read earlier, a board of deputies embraced the Biltmore program by adopting a resolution calling for the establishment of a Jewish state in undivided Palestine, hopefully within the framework of the British Commonwealth, the British government. During the years of the struggle and resistance of the Yeshuv, we were talking about it, I'll talk about it some more, the struggle and resistance of the Yeshuv after World War II, preceding the independence of Israel, British Zionists took a courageous stand against their government. So the British Zionists, the British Zionist citizens, took a courageous stand against their government. Strong forces were at work. So strong it was led by the Rothschilds, who controls the banks, which is the leader of the bloodline of the Illuminati, who are into Satanism and sacrificing people, as I've shown here. After the establishment of the State of Israel, Great Britain naturally lost its central position in the Zionist world. But British Zionists, under the direction of Levi Bastinsky, continued to distinguish themselves by their generous support of Israel and their increasing influence within the Jewish community of Great Britain. Now remember, a lot of these people were into the Kabbalah, which is people who study the Kabbalah throughout history have been accused of sorcery, which is witchcraft. The achievement of raising 11 million pounds in the emergency campaign in 1967, as compared to the 2,600,000 pounds raised the year before. So a lot of money from a lot of countries all over the world were raising money, the Zionist citizens within those countries, to support Israel in the creation of a homeland, a country which now has nuclear weapons, and something called the Samson option, which is means they'll release, if the world tries to stop Israel in its aims, and apparently those aims are no less than being the aristocrats of the world, creating a new world order and new age, and apparently they'll be the aristocrats, the leaders, and everybody else will be the slave. But within the enslaved forces, they'll use our own people to enslave us. So there's a lot of us that will betray their own people and become the prison keepers, the thugs, who will control all the masses everywhere. Right out of a TV movie, this is. As well as the fact that within a few days, about 10,000 volunteers for Israel enlisted, about 2,000 of whom actually arrived in Israel, is worthy to note. The most impressive achievement within the framework of the community is the establishment of a network of Zionist day schools since 1953. And in 1969, 10 schools were operating with the enrollment of over 5,000 pupils. So that's what's in the Encyclopedia of Zionism in Great Britain, England, London, whatever you want to call it. Going all the way back before 1900, this is 2017, and even documented here going back to 1860. So there is this plan, there has been this plan, And it might behoove we the people, this is in the Encyclopaedia Judaica, last book, 16, under Z for Zionism. It might behoove the rest of us to wake up, because this game is not over. Let's look a little bit more here in this document about Yishuv. The old Yishuv, the group of people who were living over there in the Arab area prior to 1948 when they declared independence, and new Yishuv. Because some of the information here is pretty interesting. The old Yishuv were the Jewish communities in southern Syria. So they're attacking Syria right now. They want the Syria back. Syria has to be destroyed. And then when they do take down Damascus, which is supposed to be the beginning of Armageddon, there'll be more of those Arabs to ship here to the United States. So when I go to the national forest and the parks everywhere, I'm going to see all these people in burqas. Not that there's anything wrong with those people and their religion, but you can see it's becoming more obvious. They're shipping them here in the middle of the night, according to some alternate news sites and documents and YouTube videos. Southern Syria provinces of the Ottoman Empire, up to the onset of Zionist Aliyah and the consolidation of the new Yishuv by the end of World War I. As opposed to the later Zionist Aliyah, that's the program of encouraging, motivating Jews to leave the United States, leave Argentina, leave Germany, leave Iraq, Baghdad, everywhere to be part of this, the return of the Jews from all over the world after 2,500 years of a diaspora. You don't think that's something biblical? Something meant to invoke or cause some reaction from God, whichever God I guess you believe in. Apparently the Antichrist God comes before Jesus, God. So the evil one shows up first, and then of course he loses to God, the real one. According to my uneducated description of religion, the Bible. I had one commenter say, "Rick, you should stop reading all that stuff and just read the Bible." I don't know. I choose my method of research, and I read all kinds of stuff from UFO and aliens. I've got some interesting stuff to connect the dots with the interdimensional spiritual beings, the stuff going on in Antarctica. Got a lot of interesting material I want to go over, but I got to take one step at a time. Baby steps and get each piece cemented into place. Then I can figure out in my mind the whole picture, maybe. And I'm sure a lot of people before me have tried to figure out the whole picture. So it's likely I'll never do it. But I'll see some things. I'll wake up a little bit. As opposed to the later Zionist Aliyah and the new Yishuv, which came into being with the first Aliyah in 1882. So pay attention to the dates, how long this has been going on. Waves of people moving there are called Aliyah. And was more based on a socialist and or secular ideology, emphasizing labor and self-sufficiency. The old Yishuv, whose members had continuously resided in or had come to Urza, Israel, in the earliest centuries were largely Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, very religious, Jews dependent on external donations, halukah, for a living. The old Yishuv developed over a period of severe decline in Jewish communities in the southern Levant during the early Middle Ages. So during the Middle Ages, it was a huge decline in Jewish communities. And the oldest group consisting of the Ladino-speaking Shepherditic Jewish communities in Galilee, so those would be the original Hebrews, I think, and the Judeo-Arabic speaking Mashterban, who settled in Urza, Yarijo, in the Ottoman and late Mamluk period. The second group, here we go, were composed of Ashkenazis, and Hasidic Jews who had immigrated from Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries. So the 1700s and 1800s, these Ashkenazis, probably not really Jews, they're Khazars from Khazaria, and a whole country had converted to Judaism. So they were European, they would be very white. Ashkenazism, whose immigration from Europe was primary since the 18th century, 1700s. Just reading from this Wikipedia document. Established in 1878 by the old Yishuv, nevertheless was also supported by the arriving Zionist. 1878, arriving Zionist. Rashum LeZion, the first settlement founded by the Hovier Zion in 1882. So the first settlement, according to this document, was 1882. Just prior to 1900. Prior to 1913, when they took over the USA money supply, Christmas Day, well, a couple days earlier, December 21st, Senator Hyde at Jekyll Island, Georgia, USA, while everybody was on Christmas vacation. How interesting is that? Could be, so 1882 with the first settlement could be considered the true beginning of the new Yishuv. Beginning of modern Aliyah. All the Jews returning back. We went over that in the last video with the pictures. People kissing the ground. Selling all their assets in Canada, the United States, Argentina, Germany, France, England, everywhere. Moving there, all by this huge organization, or I should say organizations, if you've been listening to what I've been saying, the different names. The Ottoman government was not supportive of the new settlers from the first and second Aliyah. So the Ottoman, Turkish, I think, government controlled all the Middle East. And they weren't pleased with all these Jews from all over the world just moving in. Aliyah. They lost control of the area during World War I, after World War I. Is there any question in people's minds that this probably wasn't a part of why we had World War I? Officially restricted Jewish immigration. So the Ottoman government didn't want this. The Yishuv relied on money from abroad to support their settlements. In 1908, prior to World War I began in 1914 in June. 6 months later, December 21st, 1913, when the Rothschilds worked in cahoots with Woodrow Wilson to create the Federal Reserve and take over the United States money supply, which basically was taking over the United States. He who has the gold rules. When they controlled our money, they controlled the politicians. And they lend money to our government for all these wars, but they have to sign for it and they have to pay it back with interest. So all this stuff going on, the USA pretty much, probably with some of their control over other nations' banks, all we citizens have been financing this, and all the governments probably owe all this money. Got to give these people credit. Man, how smart are they to get away with this? What a huge deception. You got to give these people credit for being the best darn deceivers ever. But then again, Lucifer, Satan, is the deceiver. And they're good at it. They understand human nature, temptation. Even in the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Lead me not into temptation and deliver me from evil." That's not in the Lord's Prayer when you ask the God to lead me not into temptation and deliver me from evil. It's not in there by accident. You have to be aware every day. Temptation is out there looking for you and me. And some of us are caught up in the evil, so we have to pray to be delivered from evil. The spiritual world does exist. There is some battle going on in this world and that world. In that world between good spirits and bad spirits, and this world people who make a choice to be a good person and follow the religion, whatever country, whatever religion, and people who want to dominate other people. My phone rang. I realize this may not be the most exciting information, But it certainly shows us that there's a serious plan got to be taking place right now, underway. It's been in play for a couple hundred years, and these people have been busy. In 1908, the Zionist organization founded the Palestine office under Arthur Rupen for land acquisition. So they're getting money from all over the world, including the USA Treasury, which they control. And they're buying land from all the Arabs, probably creating hardships, forcing them to sell whatever. What a drain this has been on the world, and also the intellectual asset of all these people who had businesses in America, the Jewish people, in Germany, and England, and France, and Italy. And part of Theodore Herschel's book, The State of Israel, is a detailed plans on how everybody was supposed to liquidate all their assets to these huge corporations who would give them money, and the corporation would be responsible for dispensing of the property, selling it to we the people, and then of course crashing the economy, taking it all back whenever they felt like it. So agricultural, land acquisition, settlement, and training, and later for urban expansion back in 1908. Like I said, these poor Palestinians, never seen it coming, and all the other Arab nations who were opposed to it, didn't have an inkling that there would be a 9/11 event, and they would all feel the repercussions. By 1914, the old Yishuv was a minority, so all those Orthodox good Jews were now a minority, and the new Yishuv began to express itself in its Zionist goals of world domination. The Zionist movement tried to find work for the new immigrants who arrived in the second Aliyah. However, most were middle class and not physically fit or knowledgeable in agricultural work. You're not going to believe what I'm going to read next. The Jewish plantation owners had previously hired Arab workers who accepted low wages and were very familiar with agriculture. Did you hear me? The leaders of the Zionist movement insisted that plantation owners who arrived in the first Aliyah only hire Jewish workers and grant higher wages. So you talk about insult to injury. Not only did they get the land from the Arabs, and they hire the Arabs for lower wages, then the Zionist movement, the people who are going to control the whole world, I think how nice they are, insist that they only hire Jewish workers. So now these Arabs aren't even going to have a job. The conquest of labor was a major Zionist goal. The conquest of labor. Remember Hunger Games, the movies? Those fenced-in areas, and people had access to nothing. They were given a pittance. Living like animals. And they call us goy and goyim, which means cattle. However, this caused some turmoil in the Yishuv, for there were those who felt that they were discriminating against the Arabs, just as they had been discriminated against in Russia. You think? The Arabs became bitter from the discrimination, despite the small number of Arabs that were affected by this. So, this document, you can't believe all of it. None of us will know the extent, how much the Arabs have suffered. Although we know that if you go look up bombed buildings in the Middle East, there's an endless number of pictures of cities and towns completely demolished. It isn't like a bomb here and a bomb there, looking for a terrorist here and there. Everything is wiped out, according to the pictures. There's links by the pictures that tell you which town, what date, what happened. And you can look at these tall residential buildings that were annihilated. And we know that they're shipping the Arabs into other countries all over the world. There's issues in Switzerland, for example. They don't need extra workers, and apparently these, generally speaking, the great bulk of them are young men. there's a lot of issues with the women and even rape. And apparently the government, for political purposes, are not supposed to be saying anything. We can't demonize these young men and their activities from being deported from the Middle East into these European countries and the United States. The first Aliyah was the very beginning of the creation of a new Yishuv. More than 25,000 Jews immigrated to the Palestine. The immigrants were inspired by the notion of creating a national homeland for the Jews. Most of the Jewish immigrants came from Russia. They probably weren't even Hebrew. Escaping the pogroms. Remember, they were escaping to Germany too. In Germany, they found what they would call their Garden of Eden. But that all turned around when Germany got betrayed. While some arrived from Yemen, many of the immigrants were affiliated with the Hovir Zion. Hovir Tazion acquired land from Arabs and other Ottoman subjects and created various settlements. These agricultural settlements were supported by philanthropists from abroad. That's another word for these elites, secret societies, Illuminatis. And if you don't believe me, what it says next? Chiefly Edmund James de Rothschilds and Alphonse James de Rothschilds. Wikipedia. Right where my finger is. Rothschild. Rothschild. Rothschild Illuminati, Fritz Springmeier's book. Human Sacrifices Insider. Bankster, I just went over earlier in this video. Let's see if I can pull it back up. That video, 5 Things an Elite Banking Dutch Whistleblower Tells Us. This is the Illuminati. This is the banksters. This is one of the guys. Go watch the video. And what he details, if you can't connect the dots to this whole Zionist satanic reality we're in, being created, then I don't know what to say. It's so clear. During the second Aliyah, between 1903 and 1914, there were 35,000 new immigrants, primarily from Russia. So, 35,000 people moving into this Arab land, getting through people like people who controlled the United States Federal Reserve in 1913. They had unlimited sources of money and loans, many of which were later forgiven, according to my research, to buy up all the Arab properties. And the loans came from the USA. So the United States government borrowed the loans from the Rothschild Bank to loan to the Rothschilds' enterprise of Zionism, then forgave the loan. But do you suppose they forgave the loan that was initially borrowed by our government? I suspect not. So we still, they say now that it's something like 1 million or 3 million for every child born today, 2017. He starts out owing his share of the USA debt, trillions of dollars, owing several $1 million. You think they're going to enslave the people of the U.S. to get that money back? How do they think? Are they the forgiving type? And I've been continuing to read this book. I'm going to make a video eventually. So this Jewish intelligence agents, Mossad, tells all. Quite fascinating. Their intelligence agencies live, breathe, and eat every day, monitoring everybody all over the world, and have assassins who can kill people, and set up prostitutes with our political leaders, and so many evil things. By way of deception, the making and unmasking of a Mossad officer. And I got this out of the Phoenix Journal when I was reading it. The author of those journals mentioned this author, and the Spotlight newspaper, and I've been showing this material. It's just a domino effect. You keep looking, you keep discovering more and more. During World War I, the conditions for the Jews in the Ottoman Empire worsened. So remember, this article, I'm not so sure who wrote it, but it seems like it's favoring one side, the Jews, and not favoring the rest of the world. All those Jews who were of an enemy nationality were exiled, and others were drafted into the Ottoman army. Many of those exiled fled to Egypt and the United States. So we're all affected by this, and I think it's continuing on, and it's getting even to a more critical point, especially with a lot of people waking up. So then when too many people wake up, just like I've noticed in the past 10 years, when the people start observing something like too much bombing in Palestine or in Iraq, all of a sudden there's a false flag or some other issue to distract everybody. They're not going to pass the budget in the U.S. and shut down the government. This and going on and on and on. They're playing a game with us. It's a chess game. We're the opposition, and we're not playing because we're half asleep like a zombie, and they're winning. All right, a clandestine group, Nili, was established to pass information to Britain in the hope of defeating the Ottomans. So even during World War I, they had to take the Ottoman Empire down because the Ottoman Empire wasn't going along with Aliyah. All the Jews all over the world selling their assets to do this biblical event, I guess, prophesized, ending their rule over Palestine. The purpose and members of the Nile were discovered. So they had these military groups. All involved were executed by the Ottomans except for its founder, Aaron Ershasham, who escaped to Egypt. During World War I, the Jewish population in Palestine diminished by a third due to deportations, immigration, economic trouble, and disease. During World War I, there were 2 British battalions of Jews called the Zion Mule Corps, who were to fight on the front of Palestine. They helped in the British capture of the Ottoman Syria. So World War I, between British and Germany, the British captured the Ottoman Syrian Empire. So I guess the Ottomans had taken Germany's side in the war, which, by the way, World War I prior to that, American sentiment was pro-German. Remember, we had declared independence from Britain, but Woodrow Wilson, with that sinking of a ferry off of Britain and saying the German sub sunk it, with some Americans on board, declared war. And just like 9/11, all the citizens went along. And they had economic hardships, a depression prior to that, and they had a depression prior to World War II. So they have a depression whenever they're about to cause a war, because people are looking for a way out of anything. And apparently, we're going to have a depression now, and they're planning on World War III. Isn't that a coincidence? Right. They know what they're doing. They're in control of this chess game. During the British Mandate, World War I ended along with the Ottoman Empire. There you go. Britain gained control of Palestine through the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which partitioned the Ottoman Syria, we're talking about Syria here, into French-ruled Syria, and Lebanon and British-controlled Palestine, and the Transjordan. There was a hope that British control would allow the creation of a Jewish national homeland, as promised in the Balfour Agreement. And who was the leader of the Balfour Agreement? The main signatory, the addressee. We just read that in the Encyclopaedia Judaica. That would be Rothschilds. Who's the leader of the Illuminati, the satanic organizations sacrificing people? That would be the Rothschilds. The British Mandate was formalized in 1922 based on the Balfour Declaration. The British were supposed to help the Jews build a national home and promote the creation of a self-governing institution. The mandate provided for an agency in which the Jews could represent Jewish interests and promote Jewish immigration. It was called the Jewish Agency for Palestine and was only created 10 years later, serving as the de facto government of Yishuv. The Arabs opposed the Balfour Declaration. You think? And the mandate instigated riots against the Jews. The British limited the immigration through yearly quotas. Only those who received certificates could make aliyah. So a worldwide wave of people were trying to get over there. Jews from all over the world. I could read more, but I think I'll look at that other book, the Jewish History Atlas. So it's kind of interesting seeing the activities in the last couple hundred years, this determination by the world Jews, and of course not all of them, there was some opposition, to have a national homeland, were, interestingly enough, according to material that I've gone over, you can find videos on YouTube and websites and information, plenty of websites, but there was turmoil wherever the Jews went for the past 2,500 years. Here's one video that says 92 countries that exiled or had to come down hard on the Jews for whatever reason. And a lot of times the straw that broke the camel's back was they would find a body somewhere with punch holes all in it. And they do this blood libel or this ritual where they hold the little boy up. I've shown pictures. And hold buckets under the boy will like puncture the holes and capture the blood to drink for some kind of ritual. And also so that they can get a hormone, I guess, into the blood, they use pinchers to cause pain to the boy. They want to delay the death. They want it to be very painful and very long. Some horrific pictures. You can look it up. Look up blood libels or whatever, Jewish sacrificing of people. Plenty of information that this accusation, and everywhere you look, the Jewish documents say that was all fake. It wasn't true. I've gone over that. I made a video on that. And we'll be going over it again. The number of the video I made. I got to finish another one on that book. Number 111, called Jewish Ritual Murder by Arnold Rees. So when I watch some of these other videos, I see who they're referencing, what book, and I order it, and because I don't believe everything I read, and then I get the book in the mail, and then we talk about it, look at it, discuss it. But that was Series 111. So what is this religion of sacrificing people? With the snake and the reptilian creature, even depicted on the Mayan monuments. Apparently it's a common practice to the people into this reptilian worship. Just saying. And according to the Judaica Encyclopedia, when I went over the Kabbalah in my videos I made. And how many did I make on the Kabbalah? So far, 7 2-hour videos. And it starts out saying the Kabbalah was the culture of Jews historically, period. Some kind of religion, it's their culture. And of course, the Kabbalists were accused of sorcery. And of course, in the Illuminati and the Freemasons and all the other organizations and witchcraft, they have satanic symbols, geometry, things to do with vibration, even the way they do some of their incantations. Like they have to do it certain ways to invoke some kind of beings to appear. So let me go back onto this book and show you a little bit more here that I left off in the other video and see if I can get to the point I was looking for in the last video. So Jewish traders in 800 to 900 AD. Jewish merchants played a leading role in trade after the fall of the Roman Empire. A Persian writer in about 850 AD recorded the journeys of the Jewish traders, known as Radanites, who linked the Frankish and Chinese kingdoms by land and sea. Their names probably comes from a Persian phrase meaning knowing the way. So, let me look at this thing here. Main trade commodities to China: furs, beaver skins, swords, slave girls. The Chinese were involved in the business of slave girls, and eunuchs, men who have had their testicles cut off. I guess they make slaves out of them. And from China, cinnamon, spices, musk, and camphor. So they got this little thing from 800 to 900 AD. The Jews of China. Who would have thunk that? 1000 to 1932. Not too long ago, 1932. Towns which probably had small Jewish communities by 1200 AD. Many of these had certainly been founded over 500 years earlier, but all Kafing had disappeared by 1650. Another little square block here says, by 1890, the only Jews left who still recognized their Judaisms were 200 families of Kafing. Another one over here, another city in China. Between 200 and 1000 AD, many Jewish traders from Turkestan and refugees from Persia had settled in China. In 1286, Marco Polo wrote of a strong commercial and political influence of the Jews in China. So even here in China, back in 1286, they had political influence. Because remember, they were Kabbalists, that is magic, and they were advisors to king and had all kinds of influencing powers. During the past 40 or 50 years, our religion has been imperfectly transmitted, and although its religious writings still exist, there is none who understands as much as one word of them. So they're saying the rest of us don't understand one word of their religion. Well, I'm beginning to understand the Kabbalah and its implications and the Illuminati and all this satanic symbolism and the communication with spiritual beings beyond the veil on the other side. It has been our desire to repair the synagogue and again to procure ministers to serve in it, but poverty prevents us. Letter from the Jews of Kafing to the British Council at Amoy in 1850. Wow. The Jews of Kafing, 1163, it's almost 900 years ago, they built a synagogue. In 1427, the Jewish officials organized famine relief. In 1642, Jews active in the defense of the town against bandits. 1663, restoration of the synagogue. This is Kaifeng, China. So who would have thunk there are Chinese Jews? 1850, Jews appeal to British Council at Amoy. 1914, site of synagogue and cemetery brought by Canadian Church of England Mission. 1932, Jews photographed by an American traveler. All right, show you that picture. And again, I do my book reviews like this and read from the books to try to enhance the confidence of people. You know, people say, Rick, I know something's going on, but I don't know what to believe. And if I were to just tell you things, you go, where'd you get that? So I do it this way. So I'm not trying to do audiobooks, and I encourage people to go buy these books if they're still being published and support the authors. All right, the Jews of Byzantine. So remember, there were two Christian leading organizations. Rome, of course, the Catholic Church. And then over there in Constantinople, north of the Mediterranean, the competition was the Byzantines, who didn't want to be under the thumb of the Pope. They figured they could have their own leader. So there was always that battle between the Byzantine Christians and the Rome Catholic Christians. And of course not the lower Christians on both organizations. We're just citizens. We don't know these political power games. And apparently they're saying now the Vatican is definitely under the influence and control of the Illuminati. Apparently 100 years ago, the Rothschilds took over the financial control of the Vatican. Apparently those knuckleheads couldn't take care of their own financing. And apparently even in the United States, the knuckleheads couldn't take care of the financing in 1913. I don't know what it is with people. Turn it over to people who are very shrewd about taking care of people's money. And because they're ruthless, they don't have a conscience. They can do anything, hurt anybody. Who cares? That's why Tex Mars sent me that pamphlet, which I didn't believe, and said it's, you know, most of the CEOs of the world's largest corporations are all Jewish. I said to myself, how can that be? I did my homework. I went and got a binder. I went to Wikipedia. I looked up all these corporations. And Tex Mars, generally speaking, was correct. We're in trouble. All right, so 1640 to 1532. So that's 500 years ago to 700 years ago. The Jews of Byzantine in the Christian area. Benjamin de Tudor wrote of the Wallachians. They called the Jews of their brethren. When they happened to meet them, they robbed them, but refrained from killing them, as they killed the Greeks. So apparently these one Jews robbed these other Jews, but didn't kill them like they killed the Greeks. 700 to 1000, constant exodus of Jewish refugees from Khazaria. This was the kingdom that converted to Judaism. And a lot of the Jews were leaving Khazaria from 700 to 1000. So that would be 1300 to 1000 years ago. In 1069, Jews trading in Christian slaves. So in 1069, 900 years ago, the Jews were trading in Christian slaves. Huh. You think they're into the Kabbalah, witchcraft, and sorcery? The Illuminati doing the same thing now? Pizzagate? Human trafficking? All this stuff that's being discovered? Which is concerning to me for a couple other reasons. The more the word gets out, the more that these evil forces have to pull the trigger and cause some event, like World War III, a nuclear explosion, to distract everybody. Just like 911 distracted anybody investigating the $3 trillion that Rumsfeld said was missing from the Pentagon the day before 9/11. But 9/11 prevented anything going further on that, didn't it? So 692, they were in the Christian slave business. Let's see. That was 1096. 692, the council forbids Christians to use Jewish doctors. Intermarriage becomes punishable by death. No new synagogues must be built. Jews could not own Christian slaves. 1320, Jews forced to wear a yellow badge. 1028, Jews seized by Muslim pirates and ransomed to the Jews of Cairo and Alexandria. 1300, in the Constantinople Byzantine area, across the shores from Italy, the Jews exported salt and imported textiles. In 1532, Genoese pirates seized Jews in order to sell them into slavery. 1430, Calatin pirates seized Jews for ransom in Spain. 1480, Jews played an important part in the defending Rhodes against the Turks. 1502, all Jews were forcibly converted, expelled, or taken into slavery. And let's see what else it says here. 6040, Herculius orders forcible conversions. 721, Leo III orders baptism of all Jews and Muslims. 873, Basil I forbids practice of Judaism. 930, that's the year, AD, Romanos I encourages baptism of Jews. So when I say stuff's been going on like this for 2,500 years, I'm not kidding. Why would they forbid them practicing Judaism? Let's dig a little further. The Jews of France. This ought to be good. We'll find this book. It's fascinating. 800 to 1500. 1306 to 1322. Jews expelled in France. I knew about England. I knew about Spain, but I never knew about France. They're not going to believe it. That's what it says on the top there. Top right. Stuff you learn. 1394, 600 years ago, final complete expulsion of Jews expelled from France. 600 years ago. Why? 1321, 160 Jews buried in an enclosed pit. Were they practicing witchcraft? Sorcery? Kabbalah? What would cause this craziness? Forever. 1171, Jews accused of killing a Christian in order to use the blood for religious purposes. It's in this book, page 28. I've been uncovering these kinds of evidence. 1171, in the middle of this page, accused of killing a Christian in order to use the blood for religious purposes. I'll show you. All right, over here another little square. Jewish refugees fleeing from Germany, 1100 to 1500. So way before World War I and World War II, 1100, 900 years ago, 1500, 500 years ago. Jewish refugees fleeing from Germany. Why? While they were being expelled from France. 1388. No Jew allowed to live in the city, Strasbourg, France. Ban not relaxed until 1767. So for 300 years, they couldn't live in Strasbourg, France. Why? Lyons, 1420, Jews expelled. 800 to 900 Jewish merchants trading with Egypt, Syria, Persia, India, and China. So they're always in business, which is nothing wrong with that. As long as it's not monkey business. Deception. Witchcraft, magic, whatever. Jewish refugees from Byzantine, 1100 to 800. I guess they were moving to Nice, which is southern France. 1420, Jewish community annihilated in Toulouse, France. That's what it says here. 1420. My point of all this stuff that I've been talking about in these couple videos is there have been some peoples on the main front of all this craziness for a long time. 1420, the Jewish community was annihilated. Why? Who controls the world now? Prime Minister Sharon of Israel said they do. Who financed and created the state of Israel? Rothschilds. Who's the leader of the Illuminati? Rothschilds. And the Illuminati are into sacrificing people. The evidence I've shown on this video, go look it up. And there's many more videos. Fritz Springmeier's book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Alright, 1492. Jewish refugees from Spain arrived in Bayonne. So in this page here alone, they're fleeing from Germany, they're fleeing from Spain, and they're arriving in France. And at one time, they were expelled from France. Oh my. All right. Let's try another one. I think we'll be looking at this book for a while when I do these Zionist videos. So I've got plenty of other countries. There's 100 pages I didn't go in the Encyclopaedia Judaica. It'd be interesting for me to read about Zionism in Russia, Zionism in France, Zionism in Spain. All this plotting. All this has something to do with a one-world religion and a one-world order. All right, here we got the Karaites, 700 to 1960. What's a Karaite? Karaites. Looks like they're from the north side of the Black Sea, which sounds to me like the Khazars, Khazarians, the whole country who converted to Judaism. But let me read a couple of these little blocks. In 500 AD, the publication of the Babylonian Talmud, there we go, provided Jews with an encyclopedic handbook of religious law and observance. There's supposed to be a lot of nasties in the Talmud. You can go online and look it up. The Karaites rejected the Talmud. Well, that was good. They insisted that the Bible alone provided a sufficient code of behavior which individuals could interpret according to their conscience. Karaite means a champion of the scriptures. That's 500 AD, 500 years after Jesus' birth. 1796, the Karaites exempted from all restrictions placed on other Russian Jews. 1796, like 1800, 200 and some years ago. They could move freely outside the Pale. 1960, over 5,000 Karaites scattered throughout Russia. 1960. 1943, Germans murder almost 10,000 Crimean Karaites. And again, what's the truth? Who killed them? Now remember, the Karaites were Orthodox, God-fearing, good Jews, opposed to Zionism maybe. It says it right here. They were a champion of the scriptures. And who controlled the Germans but the Rothschild bankster money, Hitler? All the intrigue, all the questions. All right, moving on here, 750 AD, the Karaites' rebellion against Persian persecution. That would be over there in Iran. In 1960, there were 100 Karaite families in the United States of America. Look at the places these are here. So if you find this stuff as fascinating as I do, I'm sure you can find the book. But this is exactly what we're up against right now with this New Age and New World Order. Make no mistake, and they control the banking system. The stock market's way up here. It dipped in the red a couple days ago. Went down a little bit. But they're sending warships today to North Korea with some Japanese ships joining them. And I wonder, is this just another big facade, a fake situation to bring about World War III? Will there be an incident that's all planned? Maybe China will attack the fleet. It's already warned the fleet to use restraint in this situation. All right, the Jews of Germany, 500 to 1,000. So, centers of Jewish settlement of about 500. These settlements had been founded in Roman times. This is Germany. Jewish migration northwards across the Alps in 500 to 1000 AD. The German Empire in 1000 AD. So look like the German Empire back then was pretty big. River along whose valleys Jews settlers as traders. Most towns had small Jewish communities by 1000 AD. Principal Jewish communities in Germany by 1000 AD. So the circle you see on this map on the bottom part of it were the centers of Jewish communities. On the bottom there. In the German Empire. Here's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. Just a real interesting historic view. All right, I'll do another one here. The Jews of Central Europe, 1000 to 1500. So 1,000 years to go to 500 years ago. 1266, Church Council decreed that Jews shall not live side by side with the Christians. The Church Council, but shall live apart in houses adjoining each other in some sections of the city or village. The section inhabited by Jews shall be separated from the Christian dwelling place by a hedge, wall, or ditch. Why? What was going on at the Jewish person's house that they had to have a hedge, a wall, or a ditch to separate them from a Christian? Doesn't that beg some questions? 1279, Church Council decreed that all Jews must wear a ring of red cloth on the left-hand side of their garment, outer garment. Why did they have to be identified? 1401, 48 Jews burnt to death in Schaffenhausen, Germany, or Central Europe, excuse me. Well, stuff is a bit bizarre. We can see from the Encyclopaedia Judaica in Great Britain, for the past 150 years, there was a lot of plotting and planning, a lot of organizations of Jews in powerful places, recruiting the lower level Jews, trying to get the homeland in Middle East, Palestine, create the state of Israel. They now have nuclear weapons and something called the Samson option. The whole world is on the edge of something now, it seems like. This whole thing is coming to a head, maybe. Ships are in the sea right now heading to North Korea. And President Donald Trump apparently summoned, or for whatever reason, all the senators, 100 of them, are meeting with him today, April 24th, Monday, 2017. Then, of course, they have that program called Gotham Shield, taking place right now this week. Preparations for a nuclear explosion. Then I was watching that video by Savi, Testimony of a Former Member of the Illuminati. Please go look it up and watch it. Even back in 2013 and 2014, 15, Jade Helm 15, if you remember that stuff. Military drills and black helicopters. I've showed pictures of FEMA camps and all that in my videos. And this other video, I'll remind you of this if you didn't write it down. 5 things an elite banking Dutch whistleblower tells us. And the YouTube site is The Outer Dark. And it's just an amazing piece of material that he talks about. This guy was raking it in on the money, going to high places, was going to some of these Illuminati satanic rituals with naked women. And he liked all that. But when they took him to a satanic ritual and inviting him to participate in sacrificing a human, he broke down. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Marico reporting.